Hello, and welcome to the Bi-Weekly Show. I'm your host, Luis Suida. In this week's news, or last week's news, there's been a lot of talk about women. And like most college guys, when women are mentioned, I immediately focus. And here's what I heard.
Well, to Bob's point, he is right that married women tend to be more conservative, but that also correlates with age. Yeah. And with age comes wisdom. And it's a known fact that the older that you get, the more conservative you get. And I always tell young people, you don't have to wait to become a conservative. Don't waste your time. But the point is, a lot of women have also caught on to the big joke, which it seems to be even more sexist to assume that women cannot take care of themselves because they're women and therefore need the government to take care of them.
Right, that's the thing. But when you're young like that, you think the same reason why young women on juries are not a good idea. They don't get it. Right. They're not in that same life experience of paying the bills, doing the mortgage, kids, community, crime, education, health care. They're like healthy and hot and running around without a care in the world.
They should be on jury. They have every right in the world.
I didn't say they shouldn't be. I just thank and excuse them so they can go back on Tinder or Match.com.
That's right. If you listen to Fox, young women shouldn't vote or even serve on juries. They should stick to Match.com and Tinder. Well, first of all, I'd like to address one major issue with this statement. What young woman uses Match.com? I mean, come on, Fox. If you're going to put down the youth and insult people, at least get it right. But this addresses a larger issue. In the last elections, Republicans failed to connect with women and minorities. For a little while, there was an attempt by the Republican Party to connect with the youth and girls especially, through the use of clever ads like this from the College Republican National Committee.
Budget is a big deal for me now that I just graduated from college. The Rick Scott is perfect. Rick Scott is becoming a trusted brand. He has new ideas that don't break your budget.
But Mom has other ideas.
I like the Charlie Crist. It's expensive and a little outdated, but I know best.
And don't forget, the Charlie Crist comes with additional costs. There's over $2 billion in taxes, $3.6 billion in debt, and 15% tuition increases.
But I'll be paying this off for the rest of my life.
We cannot let her walk out of the voting booth like that.
Mom, this is my decision. And I see a better future with Rick Scott.
Sometimes it's hard to let go of old styles, but it all worked out in the end because Brittany said yes to Rick Scott.
I'd say that calling attempts like this annoying or hard to watch is putting it nicely. But now, rather than try to work with their key demographics, the Republican Party would rather try to convince them not to vote. If the recent voter laws that have been passed to make it harder for minorities to vote couldn't help Republicans, now their idea is to simply tell women not to vote through some made-up and clearly offensive logic. I really don't see how any rational person could accept a political ideology that actively attempts to disadvantage or manipulate people, the people that they want votes from. But in the meantime, ladies, when you get called to jury duty, just tell them Fox told you that you shouldn't participate. And the time leading up to the 2016 election, when the Republicans are forced to try and establish another voting base again, just remember, they told you not to vote. For a political organization to go out of its way to pander and then insult a demographic it actively disadvantages, it's a very interesting tactic. And for a little bit more on this issue, and about women in multimedia and how women have been affected in the news today, we turn to Michael Richardson.
Thank you, Luis. Gamergate is a movement on the internet that was started by gamers to combat corruption in interactions between game devs and game reviewers, in particular YouTubers. While it doesn't sound bad just as most social movements, this one has layers to it, and recently has taken a turn for the worse.
And then, nation, let's talk about the craziness around Gamergate. If you've seen the hashtag trending and you're like, what the hell is this about, or you think it's just one thing, it is a clusterfuck of I don't know. I'm gonna try and vaguely, broadly sum this thing up without throwing my personal opinion into it. Reportedly, there are several tiers to Gamergate. The first tier is how it generally started. People were really worried about the corruption of gaming journalists and game developers. Can you really trust video game reviewers and video game journalists and even tubers that do reviews if they're getting getting sponsor and ad money from those people. They're getting special treatment. They're getting the game early, but they're agreeing not to say anything negative. What I'll tell you is companies trying to do this, that's not new. SourceFed and the PDS were at least blacklisted by one movie company. That's an unfortunate truth. But then after this first year, we had a second group that thought that, you know, people were trading sex for good coverage. The reason that came about was from a blog post from a developer where he explains this very large story where Zoe Quinn, his ex-girlfriend and indie game developer, and he said that she cheated on him with a writer by the name of Nathan Grayson. And this group believed that it was because she traded sex for positive coverage. And then an even smaller group from tier 2 jumped into tier 3. These people started slut-shaming, some of them going as far to threaten rape and murder. And then a bunch of sites started writing about Gamergate, and some of those sites decided to attack gamers in general. One article from Gamasutra, which said games culture is a petri dish of people who know so little about how human social interaction and professional life works that they can concoct online wars about social justice or game journalism ethics, straight-faced, and cause genuine human consequences because of video games. Some sites going as far to say most gamers are just white males who hate women. So we started on corruption, it came here, and then it split off into women are terrible, gamers are terrible.
While Gamergate isn't a joke, one thing most...
Unlike your acting career.
One thing most certainly is a joke.
You.
Yes. Two things most certainly are a joke.
Your life.
Behind these asinine acts of aggression towards gamer women? Yeah.
You bastard.
I know. Yesterday, Felicia Day made a blog post, and it's a decent length, so I'm going to try to summarize it for you. While she was walking around, she encountered two people wearing gamer shirts. One Halo and one Call of Duty, which is a freak of nature anyway. And she crossed the street to avoid them instead. She crossed the street instead of assuming that they were friendlies. Now this is bad on a number of levels. It used to be that there was like this unspoken bond between gamers. All of us kind of socially reclusive, all of us had common interests.
So you're saying that they were all together in their isolation?
Yeah. Gamers are a sad community. I'm one of them. The reason for her action is that some Gamergate supporters have begun slut-shaming women gamers, threatening to rape them, threatening to murder them, and in one recent case, threatened to massacre students at Anissa Sarkeesian's presentation if she were to speak at Utah State University. The extremist wrote, and I quote, "I will write my manifesto in her spilled blood, and you will all bear witness to what feminist lies and poison have done to the men of America."
It's kind of surprising how eloquent these gamers are.
It's kind of surprising how eloquent all psychopaths are.
English majors.
I mean, seriously, in light of all of the recent school shootings, did this guy really think that would go unnoticed? What a dumbass. As I was saying, I'm an avid gamer, and I'm ashamed and dumbfounded by how horrible the gaming community can be. And I encourage gamers everywhere to send support to those who have been affected negatively by Gamergate, and furthermore speak out against the Gamergate extremist assholes. This kind of indecency cannot be tolerated anywhere. In support of female gamers everywhere, and to break away from the seriousness brought on by this topic that is so uncharacteristic of the show, we now cut the footage of Luis and I facing off as two of the most badass female game characters ever, Samus and Zelda in Super Smash Bros. Also, Luis, I call Zelda.
You dumb bastard!
You're not the first to agree.
I know, I was there.
Yeah.
You were there too. Ryan was there for one of them.
He was.
Or two of them. Two of them.
I still think Ryan should be that guy.
You were part of the game. Yeah. That's even huge.
You tell me I shouldn't be forgotten that we had to do what we want.
About 6,000 games getting played. You wanted Banter, I gave you Banter. That's horrible.
Banter's like,
What?
What is that?
What's up? Yes, how does it go? Bitch. You can't be using my lines. You can't be using my lines, you hack. I can totally use your lines. They don't know the line. Wow. I think it's the first one. I'm like, why have I not been using the yeah? And I'm like, you know what? First thing. You forgot. Muscle memory is a bitch. You really want to talk to muscle memory studies? We both play video games, you ass. Yep. Boom. Damn, son. No. You forget who you're playing. Boom. Damn it. Boom. You forget who you're playing. Only time when it's convenient for me to die. Like now. I refuse to die from that. No, from that. No, from that. I chose that one. I just almost transformed. No. Haha. Shut up, Brian.
Well, let's just take this time to move away from the ever-infuriating logic of Fox and look at something else in the news. The Florida governor's race. But I know what you're thinking. Luis, both the candidates are terrible. So what the hell's the point? Well, the point, Michael, is to explain how batshit this state is. First, let's talk about the Charlie Crist, Rick Scott debates that happened a little while ago. Governor Scott, or former Governor Scott, depending on how Florida voters voted, showed his professionalism from the very beginning. And even though both candidates have had terrible track records, you have to give the Scott campaign credit for this attack ad.
He told us no cuts to education.
0 cuts out of state general revenue for education.
But we now know Rick Scott wasn't being honest.
Was Scott telling the truth when he said his proposed budget had 0 cuts out of the state general revenue for education? The truth meter rings false.
Rick Scott slashed $1 billion from Florida schools. Thousands of teaching jobs gone. $20 million in cuts to pre-K.
0 cuts.
Rick Scott, just too shady for the Sunshine State.
Looking into some of the political stances of these two, we see that there are some rather alarming things. For example, on the topic of abortion restrictions, which anyone can say that I've spent a good amount of my college career researching and being outraged by, former Governor Scott, has been a person that has advocated for higher restrictions, including, but not limited to, requiring ultrasounds before abortions, tightening parent notification laws, which have already been proven to be unrelated to state interests as per one Supreme Court ruling, and this one's the icing on the cake, a ban on any abortion after 24 weeks, including in cases of rape and incest. I know, it's a lot to digest, and I honestly hope that this guy doesn't get to continue leading this state. His opponent, by the way, has voiced his opinion both for and against abortion, and has finally settled, at least for this election season, on maintaining the status quo. With two politicians that easily switch sides, and with one that finds itself way off in the deep end of rational thought, you can sure as hell bet that those debates were entertaining. After Fangate's shitstorm died down, former Governor Scott and Christ continue what can sort of be called their debate. Here to join me in my outrage is surprise guest Michael Richardson.
In the interest of time, I've gone ahead and cut out everything you really don't need to see and don't want to see.
There's a lot.
Yeah. So we're just going to have a bunch of jump cuts. Like this. Doing on camera. I was just over there.
Well, Michael, I made you watch the debates, so now we're going to talk about it.
You watched more than you did.
Shut up. Let's talk about... Let's get political.
Let's get political!
Enough. No, it's okay. It's okay. So, let's talk about Mr. Scott and Mr. Chris' stance on abortion to start us off. Well,
starting with a light topic.
A very cheery topic. So, when we look at this, we see that Mr. Scott wants to increase restrictions on just about everything, make it incredibly difficult for women to get abortions. How does that make you feel?
Why didn't you stick with the other one?
Now, what's your opinion on their entire stance of abortion? Because, as we know, Mr. Scott is batshit crazy. That's...
At this point, I'm just gonna... over there, or maybe on top of my face. He looks like a psychopath. Continue.
Looks like a psychopath.
Looks like a psychopath.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I mean, Florida voters had to choose between a psychopath or the mascot for spray-on tans. So, on the topic of abortion, as we were saying, buddy, Governor Scott is seeking to increase restrictions, to ban abortions in the case of incest and in the case of rape. So, where does this logically come from?
Yes.
You're the best sidekick ever.
I know. That's why you summoned me here. Stay. So why the I came to Florida? Florida's stupid.
So, marijuana. Woo! Think of the children, Michael. Think of the children. Well, too bad. I did not slit the throat of a UTTV member just to summon you here.
What?
No questions. Once again, to the family of one Mr. Chris, we are very sorry for your loss. His blood was spilt for the greater good.
He was just coincidentally named Mr. Christ. No relation to the governor.
Oh, right. No relation to the governor. That spray-tanned bastard is still alive. And for once, I'm okay with conceding a loss to this state. Because for once in history, Texas, even though it manipulates education, tells students that dinosaurs roamed the earth how long ago?
6,000 years ago.
6,000 years ago. Probably with Jesus on the back of a T-Rex.
Well, it would have had to been by their timeline.
You know you have to make Jesus on a T-Rex now.
It's already here.
Oh, yeah.
Right here.
Yeah, it is.
Over my face, because there's no space around us right now.
Jesus on a T-Rex. And tells us all, reminds us all, that we're the greatest state in the Union. But for all the bullshit Texas does, they still make slightly more sense than Florida.
Only slightly.
But slightly is enough for me.
Only slightly.
I'm Luis Suida. Thank you for joining us on the Bi-Weekly Show. We'll see you next week.